This is video tutorial 7, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at methods for limiting tasks, and in this case we're going to look at MWS or Marine Warranty Surveyor restrictions that can be applied. The starting point for this tutorial is the analysis file built in tutorial 6, and it's worth noting that between the filming of tutorial 6 and this tutorial a release to Mermaid has been issued, which makes some minor visual changes to the interface. To start with, let's rename the performance limited task to MWS and performance limited, and this is the task that we're going to edit. Pop out the task details and we can resize this window, and we'll change this task from being fully suspendable being not suspendable, and we'll give it a duration of 24 hours. We're going to keep the performance limit on and we'll leave that as specified in the previous tutorial. With this 50% limit applied, it's possible for this task to take anything between 24 and 48 hours to complete. When we're analysing a task, we may also want to apply some contingency to the work so that a sufficient length weather window exists to safely allow the completion of the work, even if unforeseen events take place. And in reality, we often consider contingencies on work to allow for any slight unreliability in forecasts. If we were to model this additional length as additional length on the task, we would require more work to be performed than the 24 hours specified here. So we need a method by which we can specify a clear period of weather but still keep the work at 24 hours or similar. By applying an MWS restriction, we can do this. We can specify a window length and limits that we're interested in having before we commence work, but we can then continue on to the next task in our diagram upon the completion of the work. So in this case, after the 24 hours of work have been performed at maximum efficiency, or after 48 hours have been performed at 50% efficiency. It's also worth noting that whilst we change to a not suspendable task in this example, we don't need the task to be not suspendable, and MWS restrictions can be applied to all suspendability types. To apply an MWS restriction, we check this box, and the task now requires some additional information to be provided. We specify a duration and some alpha values which are applied to the limits. These are factors of safety, and we see in this helper text below the window that we're actually searching for. The method used in Mermaid conforms to the DMV recommended practices for determining these windows. So let's set the duration to 72 hours, and we can now set about considering the alpha values that we want to use. We'll leave the current alpha value at 1 as we're essentially unlimited on tidal current. We'll set the wave height alpha value to be 0.9, and we can see in the helper text below that this changes the limit that we're looking for in this window to 1.8 meters, and we'll change the wind speed to 0.95. And we can see again in the helper text that this reduces the limit to 17.1 meters per second. So we've now instructed Mermaid to look for a 72-hour window at those limits specified in that text before it commences work on the task. Work on the task is then performed to the required duration at the limits set above, these being the operating limits. And as noted previously, this work continues until the task is completed, and it is upon completion of the task, not completion of the MWS window, that we move to the next task in the list. So let's go over to the Run tab and run this analysis, and we've sped that process up. It takes a minute or so to run, and as always we can import our results from the output zip, and we can take a look at the summary table that's generated, and in addition we can add in some other charts. Notice in this work that we have some quite lengthy durations on task 1, MWS and performance limits, and this is as a result of seeking that clear window. And we can see on the cost duration chart that we have some outliers, that we have some clustering of results. And we discussed this a little bit in tutorial 6, and we'll go on to talk about it further in some tide optimization tutorials later. That's the end of this video tutorial, during which we've discussed Marine Warranty Surveyor restrictions and how these can be applied to tasks to limit when work can be performed, and the manner in which Mermaid progresses through the task list upon completion of work.